Hello guys, you're watching the latest on the Fidget1764 channel, and in today's video I'll be going over my official 2022 predictions. This is not long prior to the first bounce, hence the text in the thumbnail on the slide. Unlike other people, this video took some time to put together because I had to use the squiggle ladder predictor to determine if my predictions are possible. So let's kick things off with the ladder, going from 18th to 1st. In 18th place, I have Adelaide. I think they'll spend a few years at the bottom. I can only see them getting worse before they get better. I have them winning only 2 games with an atrocious percentage. I don't know what it was, but after they went 3-1 in the 2021 season, they were one of the most uncompetitive teams in the league. Had they lost to North Melbourne, they would have won the wooden spoon. And guess what? They even lost against Collingwood, and it was at Adelaide Oval. You don't deserve to finish out of the bottom 4 if you lose against Collingwood at home. Their biggest win it will be against Carlton in an upset win, but I don't think they'll compete against the Bulldogs because we all know the gap between their skill and the Bulldogs' skill. In 17th place, I have the Suns. Like Adelaide, I don't see them going anywhere, and I have them only winning 3 games with a percentage almost as bad as Adelaide's. They're not a competitive team for the most part, and even when there was a period where they were getting better, they just got obliterated by Melbourne. They were just not up for it, and that game was a Gold Coast home game. If I'm going to be completely honest, their list is the most inexperienced in the league. I see them having a comfortable win over the Crows, since the easiest team for 17th to beat is the 18th team. But I don't think they're going to compete against Geelong, considering the recent matchups those two teams had. 16th is Collingwood. They play arguably one of the worst and most lackluster brands of footy, and their aging players don't help at all. And usually when a team gets a new coach, it takes a while for him to coach properly. Like their 2 biggest losses of the 2021 season were under their new coach. They beat Melbourne, didn't lose by much against Sydney, but they did not compete against Brisbane. This shows that it's the coach that's the problem. I think they will have their most comfortable wins over the 2 teams below them. Most bottom teams can beat the teams below them, if I can be completely honest. But their most disappointing game will be against the Swans, a 100-point loss. I've got West Coast in 15th spot. This seems like a big call since they finished 9th in 2021, and it seems somewhat biased since I'm a Freo fan, but I don't hate West Coast. Not like most people, but I don't know what it was, but at the back end of the 2021, they played not just like a bottom 4 team, but in my opinion, the bottom team on the ladder. They got smashed by the team who ended up finishing 17th, and didn't win another game after that. I don't think they'll have a good record, their biggest win being only 40 points against Gold Coast. But they'll just lose by over 18 goals against Geelong, since it's at GMHBA, and we all know how they play there. Fourteenth, I have North Melbourne. I feel like too many people underrate the Kangaroos. Like they were competitive in the 2021 season, since round 10 against the Bombers. They have a somewhat talented young list, like I can only see them getting better, and while they might have dips here and there, these guys are on the up. The question is, will they contend for finals? It's very unlikely, but their talented list is nearly as good enough. Their best game will be against Gold Coast, a very comfortable win, but I don't see them doing good against the Bombers. There's always a game where they play horrendously, and that goes for almost every team. In third spot, I've got Hawthorn. Like North Melbourne, I think too many people underestimate them. I actually think they'll be in finals contention for most of the 2022 season. They have improved since the thumping against Freo in round 17. I feel like they'll be in a different situation to Collingwood though. Something made me think that they will do better under their new coach. And with their talented list of one of the easiest fixtures, they can definitely push for finals in 2022, but it's very unlikely. I actually think the teams fighting for the finals for most of the season will range from 6th to 13th. Again, I have them beating Gold Coast by a lot since it's Tasmania, but I don't see them putting up a fight against Port Adelaide because they don't play well at Adelaide Oval, and Port Adelaide are one of the best teams in the competition. In 12th spot, I have the GWS Giants. They did the worst in the draft and trade, in my opinion, and I think their fixture is harder than Melbourne's and the Western Bulldogs. To be honest, I think they have the hardest fixture of any team in the AFL. I don't know why a team would lose so many of their best players like that, and this team is very inconsistent. Like, they can beat Geelong at GMHBA and lose against Gold Coast at home. They should be making finals, but I don't think they will because of inconsistency, horrible trade and draft, and in my opinion, the hardest fixture of any team. Once again, for like the 5th time, I have them beating Gold Coast by a fair bit. I know I have Adelaide last, but I feel like Adelaide will get smashed by the higher teams. This is a big call, but I have them losing to Port by over 100 points. Like I said, there's always one team. Like one game where one team does really bad. And I just think that will be the Giants game. And also I think they'll do good at the start and do very bad at the end of the season. In 11th is Carlton. I've backed them in a lot of the time because their list has been improving over the last 3 years. They should be making finals with all these improvements, but they always keep failing. They almost never beat top 8 teams, and that's what they need to work on to make the finals. I don't know what it is, but I think they'll have a great start to the 2022 season and do horrible at the end. I even have them losing to Adelaide in round 20, as there's always one team that upsets Carlton. Their biggest win is against Gold Coast, but that's probably a big call since they don't really smash Gold Coast. So yeah, I just said Adelaide will be the team that upsets the Blues, but 2 weeks after that, their finals hopes end with a 64-point smashing in the hands of Melbourne. In 10th spot, I have the Tigers. Many people say they are going to make the finals. I feel like they'll have one more year outside the top 8. I do see them doing a little bit better. I don't know how they finished 12th in 2021. I have a feeling they'll be upset by one or two of the teams below them on the ladder, like last year. I don't see them having a good start to the season either, even though their first game is against Carlton, but they'll be hungrier later in the season, and I think they'll even beat Port Adelaide in round 13 in an upset. Once again, if you're sick of it already, I have them beating Gold Coast by 55. But their bad game will be against Port in round 21. I just think they'll have a few dips here and there. In 9th, I have the Swans. This is probably the biggest call so far. I want to put them in finals. One of the reasons I have them out is because I think a lot of teams will rise, and I couldn't fit them in the finals. They're a good team for sure, but some part of me doesn't think that Buddy Franklin will do as good this year. They also lost young guns such as Jordan Dawson and George Hewitt, so that doesn't help. I just feel like with all the rising teams, it's they're not going to do as good as people think. Many people think they'll finish first, so if they can rise up 5 spots, they can fall down 5 spots. Finally, the first time in a while, our biggest win is not against Gold Coast. I have them destroying Collingwood in the second last round of the season. Round 22 seems to have a lot of smashings. I just don't think they'll put up much of a fight against Port Adelaide, since every team has to have a bad game. Most teams, should I say. In 8th, I have Brisbane. This is another big call. Some people feel like they'll have one more chance to make a grand final. It sounds crazy, but I think 2021 was their best chance. They were robbed against the Bulldogs, and had they won that game, they could have beaten Port Adelaide in the preliminary final. I think it would take about 3 to 4 years for them to get back into form. They lost a few young guns and they didn't have a good draft or trade period. They received Darcy Ford, a very inexperienced player, and like Sydney with all the rising teams, they won't do as good as people think, in my opinion. Their fixture is very, very hard as well, in my opinion. Probably not as hard as GWS, Bulldogs or Melbourne's, but still really hard. We finally have a biggest win that's not against Gold Coast, but here we are again if you're sick of it. The Lions will dominate the Q Clash like they did in 2021, and considering Melbourne's form and the fact that they don't do well against them away from home, I have the Lions losing by a fair bit. Before I get to 7s, I just want to tell you something. I originally had Sydney 8s and Brisbane 9s, and I was unsure where to place the two. It was decided by a roll of the dice. If it landed on an odd number, Brisbane would be 8s and Sydney would be 9s, and vice versa. So I rolled a 3, and that's why those teams were placed where I had them. In number 7, I have Fremantle. Some people might be thinking, Fidget, why are you doing this? Why are you putting your team in the 8th and West Coast 15th? I said I don't hate West Coast. But anyway, losing Chera might have been a bad move, but they got Jordan Clark and Will Brodie in return, and they are quite decent players. That's not all. They arguably did the best in the draft with Erasmus and Johnson and the other 2 players, or how many they are. I want to back them even more and place them in the top 4. The problem is they struggle against teams above them. They only beat Sydney, GWS and West Coast, and they were all at home. I think they'll make finals, but they won't be consistent. I feel like they'll win 7 or 8 of their first 10, and then almost miss the finals. Or maybe miss the finals, who knows. The back end of their fixture is very unfriendly. I think their easiest game is against Collingwood, since it's at Optus. They play Adelaide and Gold Coast away. I don't think they're going to have a good game against the Bulldogs, since Freo always gets smashed in a game, like they did against Geelong by 69 points last year. I think they're going to lose to the Dogs by even more, considering that the last time Freo played the Dogs at Marvel Stadium, they lost by 47 points, and they will probably lose by more considering the Dogs' recent form. In 6, I have Geelong. Some people think they're going to miss the finals. I think that's too far. People have taken it. In my opinion, they have the easiest fixture of any team that made the finals in 2021. But the con is, they only have something like 2 games at GMHBA Stadium in their first 8. That is not going to be entirely easy for the Cats, and their players are aging and their draft and trade wasn't good. The rising teams can make it hard for this team, so they need to make GMHBA more of a fortress, even if it is already. I think they'll be an average team in the first half of the season and come out of nowhere and finish 6th. We all know how they do against West Coast at GMHBA, so I have them winning by over 18 goals. I think they'll have a really bad game against the Dogs, because that's where I think Geelong will be at their worst that period of the season. In fifth, I have St Kilda. This might be a crazy call, but their list has improved. Even though they lost one of their key players, their remaining players are getting better. I feel like 2021 was an anomaly because they had a lot of injuries. But other than that, this team is on the up. They beat Brisbane at the Gabba and almost beat Geelong and Port. And they beat Sydney. They can compete against most teams. They can beat nearly all the teams below them on their best day. I'm just tipping them as one of the teams to do the unexpected. Their fixture might seem hard, but it's probably not as hard as GWS, Brisbane, the Bulldogs or Melbourne's, in my opinion. If they can beat Brisbane at the Gabba and by 32 points, they can beat anybody. I think they'll have a great game against the Crows in round 10. They usually do good against the lower teams, like they smashed Hawthorn by 69 last year. I don't think they'll do great against Geelong at GMHBA because I think the Cats will be too hungry at the end of the season. In fourth spot, I have Essendon. Another prediction that some people think is crazy. Their players are really improving. They have depth in their midfield. Their forward line with Wright and Tip and Woody, they are a high-scoring team because of that. They ended up scoring more points than Melbourne. Last year, Melbourne scored 1,888 over 22 games, compared to Essendon's 1,953. They've been thrashing a lot of the bottom teams. Like 4 wins over 60 points makes me want to back them in even more. Speaking of big wins against bottom teams, they'll have a feast on the Crows in round 4, but when Brisbane are hungry to make the finals, the Bombers will struggle in that game, especially since it's at the Gabba. In third is the Western Bulldogs. I know they made the grand final in 2021, and I think they'll do really good next year. The reason they are third is because, in my opinion, their fixture is even harder than Brisbane's or Melbourne's. If I were to rank the fixtures by difficulty, I'd go GWS tied with the Bulldogs, then Melbourne, then Brisbane. Their scoring power is pretty high. They had the 2 highest scores of the 2021 season. I also had them low because Josh Bruce is out for most of the season. I feel like this team will smash some top 8 teams due to their high scoring power and their decently powerful defense. I have them destroying the life out of Adelaide in round 6 at Marvel. Like you saw what they did to North. Their worst game will be against Port in round 8 in a high scoring affair in my opinion. In second, I have Melbourne. I have a feeling they'll be too hungry to win another premiership, and I think they'll be more tired because of that. Of course, you have to have the Premiers in the top 4, even though they are second in my predictions. They are one of the best, if not the best team in the competition. You saw what they did against Geelong and the Bulldogs, won both games by an average margin of 78-79 points. I think they'll have a great game against Gold Coast in round 2, no surprise there. But their biggest loss is probably going to be against the Bulldogs, since the Bulldogs made the grand final as well. So that means in first I have Port Adelaide. I can see Ollie Wines having his best year. I just think it's their turn. They hardly ever lose at home, and they should really be pushing for not only a grand final, but maybe even a premiership. They have the easiest fixture out of all the finals behind Geelong, in my opinion. They'll bank a win against every team in the bottom 10, and mostly by big margins. That's what they did last year. They surprisingly finished second for that reason. No one expected them to come back by 22 points and end up smashing Carlton by 95 points. I think their biggest win will be against GWS in round 17. Just for something different, a team's biggest win against the finals contender. And their biggest loss will be against Melbourne in round 18, since that Melbourne game is at the MCG. I'm going through all the home and away season records for more bold prediction, and just note finals are not included in these records. Even though I have Sydney missing the finals, they are one of the highest scoring teams. They should get one of the highest scores of the season, and maybe the highest. Bulldogs against Adelaide, I had them winning by 124 points, so you'd expect their score to be pretty high. Port Adelaide against GWS, I had them winning by a huge margin. Essendon 3 times scoring 140 or more. I think their forward line will improve. Freo scoring 140, I feel like that might be biased to a few sorry Collingwood fans. Geelong, I had them beating West Coast by heaps. Brisbane against Collingwood, high score for the Lions. They are a high scoring team, but I don't feel like they can get over 133. And Melbourne against Carlton to end the Blues finals hopes. Now it's time for lower scores. I have West Coast in a shocker of a match against Geelong at GMHBA Stadium. Gold Coast with 27, 30 and 36. I think they have the worst forward line in the AFL. Hawthorn against St Kilda. Hawthorn's finals hopes end there. Fremantle against Port Adelaide in round 16. I don't think that will be a good game for Freo. Adelaide 34 against Gold Coast. I said Gold Coast will have their best game there. St Kilda 36 against Geelong, round 21. I think the Cats will surge towards 6 in their last 3. Collingwood against St Kilda in round 1 seems like a boldish call. Geelong 38 against the Western Bulldogs. Almost every team has to have one bad game. The biggest wins now. The Bulldogs once again have the biggest win of their season. The Cats against the Eagles. We all know how West Coast do at GMHBA. Power by GWS again by over 100. Geelong another 100-point thumping, this time against Gold Coast in their surge towards 6. Sydney smashing Collingwood, the highest score of the season. Melbourne to destroy Gold Coast, no surprise there. Essendon to thump the Crows like they did in 2021. Dockers pumping the Magpies once again, sorry for bias. The Bulldogs to smash Freo to pieces, since it's at the end of the season where Freo always do bad. Carlton to smash the Suns in a bold call. Now it's time for finals. In the first qualifying final, I have Port Adelaide beating Essendon in a comfortable win. It's at Adelaide Oval. The Bombers don't play well there. They got smashed the last time they played against the Power. Next, we've got the first elimination final featuring St Kilda and Brisbane. Now, I'm going to tip Brisbane in this game due to St Kilda's finals experience. We then have the second qualifying final with the D's comfortably beating the Dogs. I picked the D's. Any Melbourne Bulldogs final will be hard to tip. But I just don't think the final series will have many close matches like 2021. To close the first week of finals, we have Geelong smashing the Dockers in a low-scoring affair. Those two teams are very defensive, and Fremantle struggle to score much against the Cats. To start the next week of finals, we have Essendon winning a final in like 6,300 days prior to this game. I just don't think Brisbane will make it to the preliminary final. They never win the semi-finals. Next up, we have the Bulldogs beating the Cats in only the second close game of the final series. I just feel like the Bulldogs will win since it's at Marvel. They do very well there. Time for the preliminary finals. I think Port Adelaide will have an easy win against the Dogs. I just think they'll get that revenge. I think Port Adelaide are a bit more hungry to win that game, in my opinion. Then we have Melbourne beating the Bombers comfortably, no surprise there. Nobody would have Essendon in the grand final. So Port Adelaide and Melbourne make the grand final. I'll be going through the scores halfway through and at the end of each quarter. I have the Power kicking the first 6 goals of the game in the first 10 minutes. Just think Port Adelaide will have a great start to this game. Quarter time, Port lead by 43. Melbourne seemed to make a comeback halfway through. The margin is still 43 at halftime. I think Melbourne will put up more of a fight in the second quarter. Halfway through the third, Melbourne cut it down to 40. It's down to 39 at 3/4 time. Will it stay like this the whole way through? Not much change halfway through the last. It's still 38 points with 10 minutes to go. And surely Port are premiers from here, you'd expect. Port increased the margin to 45. Melbourne respond, but Port do as well. 2 minutes left, it's going up, it's now 52. Port are having a great end to the season. 1 minute left, Port get another. Will they get to 60 as a great end to the season? They get to 60 with 30 seconds left. 3, 2, 1. A monster win over Melbourne means that Port Adelaide are my predicted 2022 premiers. Now it's time to read the lyrics to the Port song to celebrate Port's victory. We've got the power to win, power to rule. Come on, Port Adelaide aggression. We are the power from Port. It's more than a sport. It's the true Port Adelaide tradition. We'll never stop till we're top. That's history there in the making. Port power to win. We'll never give in till the flag is ours for the taking. With our tradition so strong, we can't go wrong. We're the Alberton crowd, Port Adelaide proud. And the heroes are those who've earned the right to wear the silver, teal, and black and white. And the Port supporters standing tall, true believers one and all. We've got the power to win, power to rule. Come on, Port Adelaide aggression. We are the power from Port. It's more than a sport. It's the true Port Adelaide tradition. We'll never stop till we're top. There's history there in the making. Port power to win. We'll never give in till the flag is ours for the taking. Power. The winner of the Norm Smith medal is... it's Ollie Wines. Now let's go through awards now. I have the Bont winning the Brownlow. Most people say he will win it. Seems like a bold call, but I have Bailey Fritsch winning the Coleman with 69 goals. He had been getting better as the season went on. That's not all. I have 5 big calls and 1 biggest call. Geelong winning 2 games in a row by over 100 points, specifically against West Coast and Gold Coast in the last 2 games of the season. It happened in 2018. They belted Freo by 133 and Gold Coast by 102. Sydney going 6-2 and missed the finals. You think that'll be the biggest call, but my biggest call is something pretty outlandish. Third, I have 10 games in the home and away season being decided by over 80 points. This seems like a big call, but it actually happened last year. But 1 game was a final. The high scores by a team who ended up missing the finals. I have Sydney missing the finals and them scoring the high score of the season, 164. It happened a few times in 2013, 18, 19. Adelaide missed the finals and scored the highest score. Same thing happened in 2014 with West Coast, and in 2020 North scored the highest score and finished second bottom. 5th, Essendon win their first 6 games. It's a big call since their first 3 are Geelong, Brisbane and Melbourne. But after they win those 3, they'll beat Adelaide, Freo and Collingwood, since they play them all at Marvel. And my biggest call, it's very big. Every word is a key word. Adelaide register their first of only 2 wins against Brisbane in a comeback win, 30 plus points. that call is probably the biggest call I will have. Like, I can't believe it happened in 2019 when Carlton were at the bottom, Brisbane were at the top. Carlton came back from 39 points and won. Alright guys, that's gonna wrap up the video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know your predictions in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. See you next video.